Hello everyone, today is 13th July 2025. A vision on the question, why are humans born? Before asking why humans are born, we must first understand where being human comes from. When we ask why humans are born, the question already assumes that there is such a thing as being human. This is looking from the result, not from the cause. Therefore, I will begin by explaining the starting point. Before there was being human, there was already life. All of us are the life element. This is the very first point that must be understood. All phenomena arise from causes. If the origin is not understood, we will inevitably remain trapped in endless cycles of mental fabrication. Have you noticed that humans are always searching for origins? Where did the world come from? Where did aquatic life come from? Where did the water in the oceans come from? Where did minerals come from? How did plants arise? Where did animals come from? Even galaxies, how did they arise? And the universe itself, where did it come from? Humanity has always been searching for origins. Therefore, before answering what humans are born for, we must first explain the cause. Only then can the question of purpose be approached. Without this perspective, we remain caught in endless confusion within the external cycle of appearances. The most essential knowledge is knowing where we come from. We are the life element. Before becoming human, life already existed. To see this clearly, we can look at the closest and most ordinary experience, deep sleep. In deep sleep, the sense of being human disappears. There is no birth and no death. There is no act of knowing, no mental fabrication. There is no good or bad, no right or wrong. There is no anger, no hatred, no love. There are no parents, no children, no relatives. There is no identity, no name, no nationality, no world. This can be clearly seen. In deep sleep, there is no knowing of who we are. There is no knowing of where we are. There is no knowing of nationality. There is no knowing of whether we are human or not. Everything disappears, yet life remains. Deep sleep is not death. The absence here does not mean the absence of life. It means the absence of fabrication, the act of knowing, and story. Deep sleep reveals the life element itself, quiet, clear, and pure, simply existing as it is. It is natural, original, and unconstructed. When contact occurs, the act of knowing begins. When the act of knowing arises, thinking follows. Mental fabrication begins. Value and meaning arise, and identification forms. I am human. I was sleeping. I have awakened. I have things to do. What time is it now? This is the human world, where there is a self, time, and tasks. Being human arises at this point. As the act of knowing and mental fabrication begin, anger, hatred, resentment, and hostility arise. Memories arise. Love arises. The entire story of being human, having parents, relatives, and relationships, arises precisely through this process of fabrication. Do you see that being human arises at the moment the act of knowing begins, when thinking and mental fabrication start? And in deep sleep, where does being human go? Where does the sense of me disappear to? We do not even need to speak yet about the body breaking down and dying. If the body disintegrates, the life element or mind simply finds a new body. With a new body, the act of knowing begins again, Thinking begins again, just as it does after deep sleep. From the very beginning, we are the life element, still, silent, and profoundly pure. The life element does not require a form. What it lacks is wisdom. Because wisdom is lacking, it must rely on the body and mental phenomena. When the mind or life element lacks wisdom, it constructs name and form. It gives rise to the act of knowing and to thinking and fabrication, and then attaches to that body, to that vessel. In this way, subtle and gross form are established. Subtle form consists of thinking, the act of knowing, and all mental fabrication. From there, attachment to the physical body follows. Thought fabricates and gives value and meaning, concluding that I am human. All of this is merely thinking. We rely on thought to assign value and meaning to physical elements and external things, calling them my arms or my body, even though that vessel itself says nothing at all. Yet the sound, the thought, to which value and meaning are being given, is taken to be the body itself. From this, the understanding forms that the body exists because of thinking. Everything spoken in daily life is thought. The voice speaking now is thought. Thought is relied upon to understand everything. This is relying on mental phenomena to understand the body. This dependence is constant, yet is it noticed? When this is clearly seen, insight arises suddenly. The mind becomes light and open. It is realized that everything in this world arises through thought. The structures of family and identity collapse. The sense of possessing a body dissolves. The world is seen clearly as a world of fabrication, a conventional world. For this reason, the sage said that humans are lost in convention, lost in the conventional world. Yet in liberation or in the mind itself, none of these exist, just as in deep sleep. In deep sleep there is no convention, no act of knowing, and no thinking. That is liberation. However, it still lacks wisdom. The mind is the life element in a liberated state, lacking only wisdom. It requires wisdom to know what it truly is. In deep sleep, there is purity and life, but no fabrication and no self-knowledge. This is ignorance, the absence of knowing. Because knowing requires the act of knowing and thought, the mind must rely on the body and mental phenomena. When the body and mental phenomena are in place, the act of knowing begins to function. When something makes contact, whether it is a voice calling or physical touch, the act of knowing arises immediately. Do you see this? The act of knowing begins to work. The function of knowing operates on its own. This is simply the functioning of knowing. In deep sleep, however, there is only liberation, a state that is purely present as it is, yet unable to know itself. At that point, we are unable to know ourselves. Life, or the pure life element, cannot know itself. This is called ignorance, not because it is impure, but because there is no knowledge within it. There is only not knowing while remaining purely as it is. When the mind relies on the body and mental phenomena and contact occurs, the act of knowing arises immediately. At the very moment contact occurs and knowing arises, mental fabrication follows instantly. Memory and recognition arise completely. One becomes aware. What time is it now? Is it time to wake up? What day is it today? Thought arises immediately and continues on its own. It then begins to give value and meaning right away. There is time, there are events, and there is a sense of me here. From there, thought continues. How many hours have I slept? Am I male or female? All stories return. All memories return. It remembers how long we slept, remembers that we must get up, remembers our duties and what we must do next. Mental fabrication continues, continually giving value and meaning, that there is time, that there are hours, and that there is a self who has awakened, a self who is knowing. Do you see? The act of knowing functions first, and only then does thought enter and give value and meaning. That there is a self who knows, a self who awakens, a self who thinks. Now look back to deep sleep. Where did the sense of self go? In the mind or in the life element, there is no word self, no male or female, no time. There is no time, no distance, no one sleeping, no one waking, nothing at all, no humanity whatsoever. In deep sleep there is only purity, only life, only the mind existing as it is, unable to fabricate anything at all. But the moment we wake up, being human appears immediately. The sense of me appears immediately. Anger, hatred, resentment, and hostility all return. Memories return. Who is a parent? Who is a child? Who is a relative? All stories return. It remembers, it recalls, and it pulls all stories back together at the very moment of waking. Everything rushes in. Thought begins to fabricate more intensely. The brain begins to function. Being human arises right here. All stories arise right here. Now look at being human itself. Once it is established, once the body and mental phenomena are fully in place, being human is taken to be real. We believe at that point that we are human. Yet in deep sleep there is no humanity, no animal, nothing at all, no subtle body and no gross body. From here, we begin to see how release from the cycle occurs and how freedom from suffering becomes possible. Sleep, however, is not liberation. Sleep is only a temporary rest. It shuts down the human system and the entire system of suffering. But it also discards wisdom. Sleep provides no wisdom at all. When waking occurs, the act of knowing begins. With knowing, mental fabrication follows. Thinking arises. Convention appears. Through knowing and fabrication, the capacity to know, to fabricate, and to cling to form becomes active. At that moment, identification takes place. What is called human appears. What is called animal appears. This is convention. Right here is the conventional world. Being human arises precisely at this point. When we understand that liberation is the state in which the mind, or the life element, is completely cut off from the act of knowing and mental fabrication, alive yet unable to fabricate or explain anything, that is liberation. Liberation cannot be spoken of. It is not a dimension, because liberation has no dimension. The conventional world, however, has dimensions. The dimension of the body and the dimension of mental phenomena, becoming increasingly subtle. All of these dimensions are constructed by the mind, by the life element itself. We are the life element without dimension, a zero element, a zero dimension. Yet we become lost in mental phenomena and lost in the body. That is all. When we understand that liberation, or the mind, or the life element itself, contains no suffering at all. Do you see this? Visualize deep sleep clearly. In deep sleep, everything disappears. Nothing remains. There is no story, no identity, no humanity. That state is not a location because it is not a place. It is life itself, life without time, without distance, without male or female, without good or bad, without merit or wrongdoing, without right or wrong, without true or false, without religion, without belief systems, and without any division of who is what. Anger, hatred, resentment, and hostility do not exist there. There is only peace itself. This is the original natural element that we truly are. For this reason, one who reaches this state cannot speak about it. How could human language be used to make humans understand it, when all human language arises from convention, while this state does not rely on convention at all? We are this element. It may be called by any name, but the name is not important, because it is not something that needs to be named. When we release ourselves from the conventional world, release from thought, emotion, and the act of knowing, we return to this pure element together with wisdom, the clear knowing that the body and mental phenomena are not us, and the clear knowing that we are this element itself. When clear knowing arises, it is directly known that we are the life element, without form, clear, and profoundly pure. This element is not separate from anything. It encompasses everything. How can this be spoken so that humans understand, when humans rely on convention to understand all things? In the state of liberation, no convention is needed at all. Nothing is needed. It is simply pure as it is, knowing by itself, complete by itself, without any dimension, without body, and without conditions. Therefore, there is no anger, no hatred, no resentment, and no division of any kind. Once it is seen that being human arises from the act of knowing, thinking, and mental fabrication, we can then look further at how this process actually functions. When the mind or the life element relies on the body and mental phenomena, the act of knowing begins to function. As soon as there is contact, whether through sound, physical touch, or any form of contact, the act of knowing arises immediately. The knowing function begins to operate. The knower begins to function. This is the functioning of the act of knowing. In deep sleep, there is only liberation, a state that remains purely as it is and cannot know itself. Life, or the pure life element, cannot know itself in that state. This is called ignorance, not because it is impure, but because there is no knowledge within it. There is only not knowing, while remaining purely as it is. When the body and mental phenomena are relied upon and contact occurs, the act of knowing arises. At that moment, mental fabrication follows immediately. Memory, meaning, and interpretation arise at once. The mind begins to sense that it is hearing sound, that it is knowing. Then thought arises immediately and gives value and meaning, that there is a knower, that there is a listener, that there is an understander. The act of knowing functions first, and only then does thought enter and give value and meaning, creating a sense of self, events, and stories. The act of knowing that hears sound is an act of knowing. Smelling is an act of knowing. Seeing is an act of knowing. Touching is an act of knowing. Tasting is an act of knowing. All acts of knowing are not the mind and not the life element. They are functions, tools that the mind relies upon. Knowing is not the mind itself. It is a function that arises so that learning can occur. When the mind relies on the act of knowing, thinking begins, memory begins, and value and meaning are given. This is the beginning of mental fabrication. Every tool that the mind relies upon, acts of knowing, thought, emotion, and memory, is merely a function. Even the thought that says, I am human, the thought that says, this is my body, the thought that says, I am male or female, I have parents, I belong to a society, or I live in this country. All of these thoughts function to give meaning so that learning can continue. The body is merely a vessel, an outer shell that allows mental fabrication and learning to proceed. The mind relies on the act of knowing, on thought, on emotion, and on memory in order to learn. These functions are called mental phenomena or mental formations. The mind relies on these mental phenomena as tools. If we observe carefully, we will see that we are the life element, yet we rely on sound to communicate, on mental imagery to understand, on emotions of pleasure, pain, calmness, and neutrality, on memory, and on the act of knowing. All of these are functions. All of these are mental phenomena. All of these are mental formations. The mind relies on these tools for one purpose only: learning. When this is seen clearly, it becomes evident that the mind is not the act of knowing, not thought, not emotion, and not memory. The mind merely relies on these functions in order to learn. Seeing this is going against the current. It is seeing the functioning of the mind as it truly is. And this is the point at which the difference between convention and liberation begins to be clearly understood. The body is merely a vessel, an outer shell that allows mental fabrication and learning to proceed. The mind relies on the act of knowing, thought, emotion, and memory in order to learn. These are mental phenomena, the tools the mind uses. We are the life element, yet we rely on sound to communicate, on mental images to understand, on emotions such as pleasure, pain, calmness, and neutrality, on memory, and on the act of knowing. All of these are functions. The mind relies on these tools for one purpose only: learning. When this is seen clearly, it is understood that the mind is not the act of knowing, not thought, not emotion, and not memory. The mind merely relies on these functions in order to learn. Seeing this is going against the current. It is seeing the functioning of the mind as it truly is. And this is the point where the difference between convention and liberation begins to be clearly understood. As for form, there is no need to concern ourselves with it. The body is merely a shell, merely a vessel that protects and allows mental fabrication to continue. Fabrication requires a vessel in order to proceed, and the body exists solely to support this process. There is no need to focus on the body. The body arises because of the fabrication of mental phenomena. Because mental formations fabricate, form appears. Our life element relies on mental phenomena, on thought, emotion, the act of knowing and memory, so that learning can occur. Everything that is called form, whether the physical body or external objects, arises entirely from thought giving value and meaning. When this is understood, it becomes clear that form has no inherent value of its own. All importance comes from thought assigning value and meaning. When this is clearly seen, the delusion of having a body gradually dissolves. The view that the body is me or mine loosens by itself. This is the dissolution of attachment to form. When form is laid down, what remains are mental phenomena, thought, emotion, and the act of knowing. At this point, nothing needs to be done. Simply listen with understanding, incline the mind accordingly, and observe. Awakening within is the seeing of these functions as they operate. When thinking occurs, it is known that thinking is occurring. When imagining occurs, it is known that imagining is occurring. When emotion arises, it is known that emotion is present. When speaking occurs, it is known that speaking is occurring. When sound is heard, it is known that hearing is occurring. These functions arise by themselves and operate by themselves. We simply see that they are functioning. This awakening is not the ultimate aim. Awakening is not the final goal. The act of knowing is merely a tool, a function that arises so that learning can take place. Simply knowing is not what is sought. Wisdom is what is sought. Knowing exists to reveal reality, not to be grasped or accumulated. Awakening within, therefore, is not clinging to knowing, but clearly seeing that knowing, thinking, and emotion are merely functions that arise and pass away. As observation continues, it becomes clear that thought is not us, emotion is not us, the act of knowing is not us, and memory is not us. All are merely functions, mental phenomena, mental formations that the life element relies upon for learning. We do not practice in order to cling to practice. We do not come to know in order to become attached to knowing. We are here to see, in accordance with reality, that what is thinking, what is knowing, and what is appearing are not us. This seeing is not conceptual thinking. It is direct seeing in accordance with reality. When this is clearly seen, attachment to both form and mental phenomena gradually loosens. The sense of self becomes lighter and lighter, leaving only the functioning of processes, leaving only the learning of the life element, without anyone stepping in to claim ownership. This is seeing the truth as it truly is. What is being known is known so that it can be clearly seen that the knowing itself is not us who know. What is being thought is not our thought, and emotions are not our emotions. All of these are merely functions. Thinking is a function. Pleasure, pain, neutrality, and calm are functions. Remembering is a function. Even the act of knowing that is occurring right now is a function. All of these are functions of the mind, mental phenomena that arise and pass away on their own. None of them are us, and none of them belong to us. This is seeing mental phenomena as they truly are. When this is seen clearly, understanding shifts immediately. What was once taken to be me is now seen to be only a process of functions arising and dissolving. Thought arises by itself. Emotion arises by itself. The act of knowing arises by itself. No one commands these processes to arise, and no one can command them to stop according to desire. They function entirely on their own, according to their own conditions. Practice is not for becoming attached to practice, and awakening is not for becoming attached to awakening. We are not here to become entangled with knowing, to maintain knowing, or to force continuous awareness. Knowing is not the goal, and awakening is not what is sought. What is sought is truth, the direct seeing that what is being known is not us. When sound makes contact, the act of knowing arises immediately. There is no need to command hearing, it hears. Understanding arises on its own. Thought functions on its own. Emotion arises on its own. Whether we try to control these processes or not, they continue to function by themselves. This is where it becomes clear that the act of knowing is not under anyone's authority. When we try to keep awareness continuous or attempt to follow every moment, there is still an assumption that there is a me who knows. But when it is seen as it truly is, that knowing arises by itself, thought arises by itself, emotion arises by itself and dissolves by itself, understanding shifts from control to simple seeing. Awakening within exists so that the functioning of thought, mental imagery, emotion, and the act of knowing can be seen clearly. When these are seen as they are, it is understood that they are merely functions, merely mental phenomena, merely mental formations, not the mind itself, not us, and not ours. When the mind clearly sees that nothing here is us, clinging loosens at that very point, and the ignorance that once assumed there was a self who thinks, who knows, and who feels collapses right there. Therefore, the way of observation does not need to be complicated at all. Simply look right here. Observe how the act of knowing functions. Notice that when sound makes contact, knowing arises immediately. There is no need to command it, no need to tell it, and no need to intend to know. Knowing arises on its own. Whenever there is contact, the act of knowing performs its function by itself. Look clearly. Even if you say, "Do not know," knowing still occurs. Even if you say, "Do not understand," understanding still arises. The act of knowing is not under anyone's control. It performs its function of knowing by itself. The same is true of thought. Thought has the function of thinking. Even if you say, "Do not think," thought still arises just the same. See this clearly. Knowing knows by itself, thought thinks by itself, understanding understands by itself. No one commands these processes to function, and no one can command them to stop. They operate according to their own nature. Just as other natural phenomena are not under anyone's authority, rain cannot be stopped from falling, sunlight cannot be prevented from shining, and night cannot be stopped from arriving. The nature of knowing is the same. When there is contact, knowing arises immediately. When this is observed, it becomes clear that the one who knows is not us. The one who thinks is not us. And the emotions that arise are not our emotions. Even if we command laughter to stop, laughter may still occur. Even if we command tears not to fall, tears may still fall. These arise according to causes and conditions. When the mind sees mental formations, sees mental phenomena exactly as they are, as mere functions arising and passing away, it is clearly seen that what is knowing, what is thinking, and what is appearing are not us and not ours. This is seeing reality as it truly is. There is no need to destroy the act of knowing and no need to suppress it. When it is clearly seen that knowing is not us, clinging loosens right here. This is the way of turning back, seeing the functioning of nature as it truly is, seeing that all functions operate on their own, and seeing clearly that none of this is us. What we have just observed, the functioning of knowing, thinking, and identifying as me, is what is meant by suffering. The phrase seeing suffering, one sees truth, does not mean that a person must seek hardship or endure pain before realizing truth. Suffering here does not refer to poverty, sadness, or emotional distress. The suffering spoken of here is the very functioning that is knowing in this moment. In deep sleep there is no knowing, no thinking, no imagining, and no emotion. In that state there is no suffering at all, yet it is not known, because there is no wisdom or understanding present. When waking occurs, the act of knowing begins, thought begins, emotion arises, and the sense appears that there is a self who knows, a self who thinks, and a self who feels. At that very moment, suffering arises. Suffering is the reliance on these functions, knowing, thinking, and emotion, together with the assumption that there is a me. Each time there is knowing with me knowing, thought with me thinking, emotion with me feeling, suffering is present. Even pleasant emotion, calm emotion, or joyful emotion is still suffering, because value, meaning, and identity are still being taken up. Those who claim to be always happy and never suffering have not gone beyond suffering. They simply have not yet seen it. As long as there is knowing, thinking, giving value and meaning, together with a hidden sense of self, suffering remains. When it is clearly seen that suffering does not lie in external events, but lies in the act of knowing together with the assumption of me, truth is seen immediately. What is happening is recognized as mere functioning, nature operating on its own, not us and not ours. Freedom from suffering comes through seeing suffering directly. See that what is knowing is not me, who knows. Even if one commands hearing to stop, hearing still occurs. Even if one commands understanding not to arise, understanding still arises. This is the direct understanding of suffering. When it is seen that knowing knows by itself, thought thinks by itself, laughter laughs by itself, emotions move by themselves and continually arise, suffering is understood. Each time knowing is claimed as me, suffering is taken up. Suffering has no true entity, it is merely a function. Thought is a function, emotion is a function, knowing is a function, speech and communication are functions. When it is clearly seen that these functions arise on their own, appear on their own, and dissolve on their own without an owner, suffering immediately loses its weight. That is why suffering is said to have no real entity, it is only functioning. When thought, emotion, and knowing are seen as mere functions, it becomes clear that what is being experienced is not us. When it is seen that nothing is me, then no suffering is mine. The knower, the thinker, and the fabricator, this is what is called suffering. See them as functioning on their own, belonging to no one. Let them operate as they are. This is the direct understanding of suffering. And when the mind accepts this truth, clarity, lightness, and brightness arise immediately. Those who see clearly will know for themselves. Those who do not yet see clearly can continue observing, because even when one says, do not know, do not hear, do not understand, knowing has already occurred, hearing has already occurred, and understanding has already occurred. If you're interested in these teachings on awakening, mind observation, and transcending suffering through wisdom. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your insights in the comments, provide productive feedback, and if you find this content valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.